Hey everybody, let's talk about delivering presentations. This is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to cover a variety of stuff. So you might want to come back to this video. I'll put some links in the video description so you can jump around as you need. I want to give you an idea of some general tips and also some information about our specific assignment and how you can try to accomplish that effectively. So let's start with the fear of speaking publicly or the jitters, number one most common fear apparently. And it's probably going to apply a little less to a recorded presentation, but it is still going to apply there for a lot of you, I'm sure. And even if it doesn't, this advice can help you produce a polished and smooth presentation in the video. So the first thing is to practice. So let me tell you a story about that. I won a couple of years ago a pitch competition, and this was for a 3-minute pitch, and I won $1,500. So that is without a doubt the most money I will ever make per minute in my life. And I'll tell you how I did it. I knew what I wanted to pitch, and so I got up in the morning and I did an outline, not an exact script, but like I made a list of kind of the segments of my presentation and the key points I wanted to make. I walked my dogs and I read over that and I went through my pitch a bunch of times while I was walking my dogs. And then I drove to campus and I put the paper down, obviously, since I was driving, and I went through it again a bunch of times for the whole drive. And then right before I actually did the pitch, I went through it again a couple of times. And so I won, and I was told that I won because I seemed so polished and practiced. So the more you can do that, the better. And I really recommend you try to do it while you're doing other things. While you're doing the dishes, go through that, through that presentation that you want to cover. Next thing you can do is, try to think positive even if you don't feel that way. Don't ever say, boy, I feel so nervous. If you don't acknowledge it, you can power through it more easily and people won't notice it. Another thing that you can do is focus on your purpose, not your process. Know that when you are delivering a presentation such as this one, and this is often the case for professional presentations, your goal is not necessarily to absolutely cover everything. Often these presentations are the start of a conversation. They're an invitation to further talk. So that is a good thing to keep in mind. I don't need to cover everything perfectly. I need to create some interest and I need to get some key points down, and we can follow up with a Q&A afterwards because that will often be the case. Okay, how do you deliver your presentation effectively? First thing you want to do is greet your audience, tell them what we're going to be talking about, state your main point, your purpose, and things like that. Um, you want to give people an outline. And then you want to open with a strong hook to try to get people engrossed and involved because that's really important for this type of presentation. You'll notice that I started with a presentation. I did most of these things. Maybe I could have been clear in this video about stating my main point, but I'll come back to that. Make sure to emphasize that main point at the end. So these are some, I think, generally good practices for opening a presentation. As with other things in this class, don't be afraid to direct your or to directly address your audience. Tell them what they're going to learn and say you in various ways. When it comes to organizing the material, this is a technique that I use that I really recommend. I like to make a list of the kinds of things I'm going to be talking about. So not exactly an outline of my content, but instead like the components of my presentation that I know I'm going to be addressing. So I know I want to introduce myself and talk about my purpose and etc. Right. So this is a potential list of kind of components for a video for a presentation like yours. And then the other thing I'll do is I will make a list of the how much I'll break the time that I have down into segments. So in this case, I took a 4-minute presentation and I broke it down into 20-second segments. So I had 12 segments, and then I just assign the segments to the components. Okay. So what I'm saying is, I don't think to myself, boy, I need to produce a 4-minute presentation. Instead, I think to myself, boy, I need to introduce myself in 20 seconds, and then I can just focus on that. And I think, boy, I need to spend 40 seconds talking about my purpose, and then I can just focus on that. Okay. And then that lets me break my presentation down, practice it in little bits if I need to. It lets me stay on time much easier because I know when I'm going over time early instead of just running over at the end. I don't always do it like this visually. Instead, what I normally do is something more like, I'll show you my comments on this. Here's if you look at the bottom, see it says end by 4 minutes. So my goal was, and I have that on every one of these slides, my goal is to like note like, okay, this is where I should be wrapping up this slide. So I'm running 45 seconds long right now. But this has worked really well for me. So I encourage you to do this. Next up, let's talk about working with sources. You are I really want you to create interest, to have images in your slides. When you do have images, you do need to cite those images for academic honesty, and just because it's a good professional practice as well. However, the ways that those images are cited don't necessarily need to for a presentation. Not for this presentation, pay attention to your organization. But for this one, I'll tell you, I don't need them to be in like a perfect APA style. Instead, if you look at Unsplash, which I'll show you in a second, they have a page and it says on the page, here's how to give attribution, right? And they just tell you like this is how you should be citing our images. And so that's what I do. So if you look at the images that I've included in this slide, you can see I'm citing them according to Unsplash's guidelines. And so that's a good um, thing to follow. And if you're not going to do that, then at least just a link or description of where the image came from. If you pull an image from Google Images, figure out where Google found that image and cite that location. You do need to have a works cited page for a presentation. You're not going to have that detailed in text to the works cited page structure, but you do want to have a slide at the end that lists some of your sources and at least kind of gives the idea like these are the sources that were really important to me in my presentation. And if you do directly quote in your presentation, then on that slide, you would want to be more specific than that. But for most presentations, just that works cited page of major influences is a good way to handle that. A few quick tips for having effective visual elements of slide. You want to have a lot of images, especially for something like a Pecha presentation. You're not doing exactly a Pecha, but we're going to watch a lot of them because I think they're a good model. And so you'll see the value of images there. So, they help you keep the pace up and they create visual interest. Having yourself on camera, as I do, is another way to create visual interest. You want to have high contrast text. If you're talking about screen, black on white is great. And this is the science. Okay, the science is that white or yellow on black or dark blue, especially yellow on dark blue, that when you're talking about a projector, that is the maximally visible thing. So if you don't know where you're going to deliver a presentation, use a template that is dark blue background, yellow text. Keep your bullet points short and have as few bullet points as possible. 5 to 7 words in your bullets, 5 to 7 bullets. If you do that, then you're going to be in good shape. Okay. All right. So if that's what you want to do, you want to have an image heavy slot presentation that's moving fast and that's easily broken down into little components for yourself and all of that. Where do you find those images and the material that you need to do that? Well, let's take a look. First resource I like to use is Unsplash. This is free stock photo. You can pay for stock photos. I've done it, and you're going to find the best work if you pay for it. But it's often very expensive. So Unsplash is free stock photos, and you can find lots of great stuff on this website. So I could come here and do a search for vegetarian. I figured I wouldn't find anything for Beyond Meat exactly on this because that's a copyrighted thing. So vegetarian though is giving me like I might use something like this. Or I could do a search for meat. Search for protein gives me a bunch of stuff like that, or similar searches. However, as I mentioned, Beyond Meat, one of the industries or companies I'd be very likely to talk about, they're not likely to show up on this. However, I can go to the Beyond Meat website, and I went to the press page and I found a press kit from Beyond Meat. So this is basically Beyond Meat's big pile of images and quotes and things like that that they are putting out in the world and they want you to use, right? They're saying like this is for use by the press or other people. So their press kit is actually a Google Drive, and there's videos and press releases and company bios and all this kinds of stuff, including imagery. And I found some great images of Beyond Meat, their new sausage product, emphasizing that it's in the meat, that they position it in the meat aisle. And this is something that I could absolutely use. So you might do this as well. Go to companies, look for their press kits. You can cite these by making clear in some way that it comes from the company press kit, or maybe just citing the press page would also work. Okay, so those are two great resources: stock photos, company imagery. If you pull something from a company but not from their press kit, just cite it the same way. Pixabay is another good stock photo website, but I find their photos are a little artsier, kind of. You can see a lot of these are pretty artsy. but it's also still great. So I always do use both. I always do a search if I'm looking for something on both. Another really great resource that I'll recommend for you is draw.io. You can see their URL up here at the top left. Draw.io is a great website for any type of chart or graph that you want to create. So it makes it super easy to do things like add shapes and connect shapes to other shapes with lines, add arrows and things like that. So I use this all the time for business presentations or things like that because it's just the fastest, easiest thing. PowerPoint will do a lot of this stuff, but it's in my experience, harder to use. And they have lots of different templates for charts and things like that. So you often have something really good to start with. I just put this one in the bank. Okay, you're going to come back to it in the future. Another thing that might be useful for you is a word cloud site such as wordclouds.com. This is a good way to represent a big pile of data, right? A pile of text specifically. And you can tweak them by changing settings. This is a word cloud that I created from our syllabus. So you can see it sort of helps you understand like what are the key concerns in something like the syllabus. So points pops up really big. That's something that I try to make super clear in the syllabus because I know it's your concern. And so a word cloud can kind of help emphasize that sort of thing. So if you can't represent a big body of text on a slide because it needs to be really quickly absorbable, a word cloud can kind of help you see what the key takeaways of those are. Another thing to consider using is an infographic. Pictochart is a great resource for infographics. You can create free infographics here. On a presentation, sometimes they're a little bit too much information, but you can maybe chop them in half and put them on multiple slides. Might be a good way to go. Or you could try to do something really different from a PowerPoint and just kind of scroll through an infographic that's a really significant or something like that. So here's the recap of all of that. Make sure to go back and take a look at this again in the future as you're working on your presentation. You're also going to need to record your presentation. I'm going to do a separate video on how to use Zoom to do that. Might be the easiest thing. Another easy thing is Screencast-O-Matic. I'm not doing a video on that because ASU provides a ton of resources, but they both work the same. They'll record your screen as you talk. Okay, so to recap, keep it fun, keep it fast paced, try not to use too much text. Your goal is to bring people on board, get them invested and interested, cover some of the information in as interesting a way as possible. I hope these resources will help you do that. Let me know what questions you have.